Good evening. I want to begin with a question. How many of you have filled out a form and had absolutely no idea what you were doing? Yeah, mortgage application, a government form, a core document, healthcare form, one everybody understands is a financial aid application. You read every word, and somehow it feels like somebody's speaking with you in a different language. Now let me ask you a second question. How many of you were embarrassed to admit it? Yeah, a significant number of you. Almost every hand goes up every time I say it. And that is where I want to begin tonight. Not with poverty, not with politics, not with policy. I want to begin with confusion, because confusion is one of the most expensive things in America today. And yet we rarely talk about it. I was born in a country called Burundi, in East Africa, one of the poorest countries in the world. When I was a young boy, my father had my brother and I walk through one of the poorest communities in our city on our way to school and back. I don't remember every building we passed. I don't even remember every conversation we had, but I remember the eyes. The eyes of men who stopped believing that tomorrow would be a different day from today. The eyes of women carrying burdens no child should have to witness. The eyes of people who seem trapped inside circumstances larger than themselves. Yet later, I would see those eyes again. Not in Africa, not thousands of miles away, right here in Illinois. But before that happened, life took me on a journey. In 1997, I arrived in the United States, and like millions before me, at the age of 12 years old, I was full of dreams and seeking challenges. Even then, I knew that this country was a place where effort mattered, a place where institutions existed, a place where people could disagree and still build something together. Eventually, I attended Valley Forge Military Academy, and there I learned lessons that would shape the rest of my life. Not from textbooks, not from speeches, but from captains, first sergeants, sergeant majors, Admiral Virgil Hill, Admiral Peter Long. They taught me something I didn't fully understand at the time. That leadership is not authority. That leadership is responsibility. That leadership is carrying people through a burden so somebody else doesn't have to. Leadership is helping people find a path forward while knowing full well that the path is dark for now, but that every step reveals more information. Leadership is essentially service. And those lessons stayed with me. Eventually, they carried me into banking. I entered the world of finance, foreign exchange, risk management, large institutions, boardrooms, balance sheets, the language of capital. And if you had met me back then, I probably would have sounded very intelligent. At least I thought I was. Then life humbled me, like it always does. One afternoon, I found myself sitting inside a courthouse hallway. I was there on an unrelated matter. And while I waited, I watched an elderly couple being threatened by a much younger lawyer during a small claims dispute. That man was in a wheelchair while his wife stood behind him. The lawyer threatened to take their family albums if whatever debt that was in dispute was not settled. An unethical conduct. And that amount wasn't particularly large. What struck me wasn't the money. It was an imbalance where one side understood the system and the other didn't. When one side understood the language and the other side didn't. When one side understood the rules and how to bend or break them while the other side didn't. And suddenly something hit me. What if people lose not because they're wrong? What if people lose because they don't understand the game being played around them? Driving home that day through parts of Chicago's South Side, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Those same eyes that I remember from Burundi. Different country, different language, different history. but the same eyes. And a question began forming in my mind. How is poverty manufactured? Not inherited, not caused, manufactured. Now, let me tell you something that may surprise you. At the age of 30 years old, with a college education, a successful banking career, and more confidence than I probably deserved, I discovered something deeply uncomfortable. I was functionally illiterate. Not because I couldn't read, not because I lacked intelligence, because I did not understand many of the systems governing everyday life. The housing system, the credit system, the court system, education system, the government, healthcare system, business formation, capital access. I knew how institutions worked from the inside, that I had no idea how it felt to be from the outside. Not in a classroom, not in a boardroom, not in a bank, in ordinary life. The kind of life millions of people live every day. And I remember thinking, how can a man who understands foreign exchange, transactions worth millions of dollars, not understand the system standing in front of him? How can somebody spend years in school and still feel lost filling out forms? How can somebody know how to build a career and still not understand the court system, or the credit system, or the housing system, or capital? And then it struck me, maybe the problem isn't that people are failing. Maybe the problem is they were never taught the map. We spend generations judging people for getting lost without ever asking who forgot to teach them the directions. That realization changed my life. I decided I would intentionally place myself on the receiving end of these institutions, not as an observer, but as a participant. I wanted to understand what ordinary citizens experience: the confusion, the uncertainty, the frustration, the fear, the feeling that everybody else understood the rules except you. What started as a curiosity became a research project, and what became a research project became a mission. And that mission eventually became more than 30,000 conversations. 30,000. Think about that for a moment. 30,000 conversations. Doctors, teachers, judges, police officers, entrepreneurs, students, immigrants, retirees, single mothers, single fathers, executives, former gang members, current gang members, people who had everything and people who had almost nothing. And after all those conversations, I discovered something astonishing. 98% of my assumptions were wrong. 98%. And that realization changed me forever. Because I realized that most people are not losing because they lack intelligence, but that most people are losing because they cannot understand or see the systems around them. And you cannot navigate a system you don't see. That became one of the central lessons of my life. You cannot navigate a system that you cannot see. One day, I met a young man named Melvin. Melvin was 19 years old, born in Chicago, raised in Chicago. And during our conversation, I discovered he had never seen Lake Michigan. Think about that. One of the most beautiful lakes in the world. One of the defining landmarks of America, one of America's greatest cities. And he had never seen it. His entire world revolved around a 7-block radius. Not because he lacked intelligence, not because he lacked ambition, because nobody had shown him beyond the boundaries of his reality. And so I offered to drive him to see the lake, from the South Shore all the way to Evanston and back. Some people hear that story and think it's about a lake. It isn't. It's about visibility. Because once you see something bigger than your current reality, you can never unsee it. Agency begins where confusion ends. And visibility creates agency. During those years, I met people who changed me. 2 women stand out. One was an elderly black woman whose family roots stretched back all the way to Mississippi. She was fighting cancer. I assumed I would encourage her. Instead, she encouraged me. She prayed for me. She asked about my children, my wife, my future. She asked about my dreams. The second was a Jewish elderly woman from Israel. She too was fighting cancer. She educated me about history. Here was a lady from Israel teaching me about hip-hop history, about some of the most compelling acts out there at the time. Positive hip-hop wordsmiths like Nissan Black, a young man from Seattle who moved to Israel and started a very successful career in hip-hop. And then she prayed for me too. She introduced me to her husband as though I was family. Both women were facing mortality. Both women had every reason to focus on themselves. Instead, they focused on somebody else. Those two women changed me. And I began noticing something. The news taught me one version of Chicago. 30,000 conversations told me another. The news shows me conflict. The people show me compassion. The news showed me division, and the people showed me generosity. The news showed me fear. The people showed me courage. And after 30,000 conversations, I reached the only conclusion I could reach. Chicago is not broken. Illinois is not broken. America is not broken. We are confused. We are distracted. And yes, we're very frustrated. But we're not broken. Because every single day, ordinary people continue to do things that are extraordinary for one another. Most of them will never appear on television. Most of them will never trend on social media. Most of them will never hold public office. But they're carrying this country on their shoulders. They are carrying this country on their shoulders. Recently, President Obama opened the Presidential Center in Chicago. His central argument was that democracy requires citizenship. I agree, but I would add something. Citizenship requires systems literacy. A person can vote and still lose their apartment. A person can work every day and still not understand credit. A parent can love their child and still not understand the educational system. That's the truth. A citizen can obey the law and still not understand the legal system. A business owner can have talent and still not understand capital formation. And you know the backer is not going to give you that lesson. Without systems literacy, citizenship becomes participation without navigation. A participation without navigation leaves people vulnerable. This is why MOPIL Illinois exists. It stands for the Manufacturing of Poverty Illinois Initiative. Not to create dependency, not to create victims, not to create politics, to create agency. Because knowledge creates agency, agency creates confidence, and confidence creates participation. And participation creates stronger families. And we know that stronger families create stronger communities. I do not believe the future of Illinois will be decided by the smartest politician, or the richest corporation, or the largest foundation. I believe the future of Illinois will be decided by a 17-year-old who finally understands opportunity, by a single mother who learns how to navigate a system that once intimidated her, that a veteran who discovers that the door he thought was locked was never actually locked, an entrepreneur who learns how capital works, a student who realizes he belongs in rooms he never imagined entering. Because agency changes everything. The moment a person understands a system around them, something remarkable happens. Fear begins to shrink. Confidence begins to grow. Possibility begins to expand. And the future begins to open. This is what MOPIL Illinois is really about. Not poverty, possibility. Not dependency, agency. Not what people lack, but what people become when understanding replaces confusion. Illinois does not need another report. Illinois does not need another committee. Illinois does not need another study. Illinois needs citizens who understand the systems around them. Young people who understand opportunity. Parents who understand advocacy. Workers who understand wealth creation. Entrepreneurs who understand capital. And citizens who understand institutions. And that future is possible, not because government will create it, not because corporations will create it, and not because foundations will create it. Because citizens, their families, and their communities will create it. The journey of my life has taken me from Burundi to New York City, from Valley Forge Military Academy to Wall Street, from boardrooms to courtrooms, from banking offices to the front of a car seat. And after 30,000 conversations, I have come to believe something simple. Most people do not need saving. They need understanding. Because understanding creates visibility. Visibility creates agency. Agency creates participation. Participation creates stronger families, and stronger families create stronger communities. And stronger communities create a stronger Illinois. You cannot navigate a system you cannot see. I'll say it again. You cannot navigate a system you cannot see. But once you can see it, you can change it. And when enough people learn how to change this, then change will happen, and they will change the future. Thank you. And may God bless you. May God bless the state of Illinois. And may God bless the United States of America.